everyone. I'm so sorry I couldn't join, but yeah, let's go. My presentation will be a bit different. You could hear from Jadranka. She was talking about the project that we are collaborating on, and I'm more into the support to publishers. I'm a promoter. I'm a librarian and a promoter of open access, and I've been working a lot with journal publishers, with local journal publishers, trying to improve their visibility and their quality. And that will be the topic of my presentation. So while I'm explaining the concept of a presentation, I would be very grateful if you scanned the code with your mobile phones and answered one question. The question is, what are your synonyms for quality? So when you talk about the quality of journals, what do you understand? What do you mean when you say quality? Basically, the idea behind this presentation is that we are talking about quality all the time. We always say, this is a high quality journal, this is a high quality publisher, I need to publish with high quality publishers because I need to get promoted, etc. But do we really know what quality means and what we understand under quality? Basically, it's clear that we have different framework for quality assessment. So we have our personal criteria for quality assessment depending on our roles. For example, I'm a librarian and I will probably assess the quality of a journal differently than a researcher. I will try to, I don't know, assess whether this journal fits into my collection, whether it's worth paying a subscription for a particular journal, etc. So it's a quite different perspective from that of a researcher. Also, there are many different official frameworks for quality assessment, apart from those personal ones, depending on our roles. And also, these quality assessment frameworks, they pose many challenges for open access journals, and you as editors of open access journals are certainly concerned about it. And then finally, as Jadranka mentioned, we are working on the Diamas project. There is another project, RAFOE. I'm not personally involved in it, but we collaborate a lot. And this project aims to improve the quality of open access journals, diamond open access journals. These are those journals that are not charging any fees to authors. There are many such journals in our region, and we are trying to support them, to make them more sustainable. And within one of these projects, the AMAS, we developed a kind of a quality framework for publishers, but it can be translated to journals as well, which is more equitable and which should be more sustainable and which should be probably more favorable for you as open access, small non-commercial open access publishers. So basically, that's what I mentioned. So if you're an author, you will probably analyze whether a journal is peer-reviewed, because you have to publish in a peer-reviewed journal. Then you will analyze the aims and scope of the journal. You will ask many, many questions, try to investigate the journal website, but basically there are some questions that will be probably more important for you as an author than the quality of content, the quality of individual articles, and this is whether the journal has an impact factor, where it's indexed, and who's the publisher of that journal. You will probably have a look at the editorial board to see whether you recognize some famous names there, etc. So this is one of the perspectives. So if you're invited to be a journal editor, you will have a different perspective. So you probably will try to understand whether your expertise is relevant to the journal, to its scope, how you can contribute to the quality of the journal, as an editor, whether you can attract some new authors, whether you will be able to deal with the topics covered in this journal. You will probably have a look at the quality of the content of individual articles, because you will be dealing with the submissions, and then if they are quite poor, this is more work for you and this is unrewarded work. So you will probably be quite concerned about the quality of individual articles. You will probably have a look who the publisher is and what's the reputation of this publisher. You will probably have a look whether this journal is already indexed somewhere or not, because if it's not indexed, then it will be more work for you. You will probably be expected to invest a lot of effort into into getting this journal indexed. So basically, you will also try to see whether it's predatory or not, whatever this predatory may mean, because the concept of predatory journals is highly disputable and quite unfavorable for journals in our region, non-commercial journals. So you will probably have some more practical questions, like, for example, whether you will have some assistants, whether you will have a secretary assisting you or other co-editors, or whether you would have a submission system, for example, because if you are going to handle all of these things via email, then it will be more difficult. So your perspective of what constitutes quality is quite different from that of your perspective if you are submitting a paper to a journal as an author. Also, national institutional assessment bodies have a different perspective, and this is probably one of the biggest problems for us supporting open access journals, is that their criteria are not very favorable for us. So in our region, the impact factor and the indexation in the Web of Science, and sometimes in Scopus and other data indexing databases, which are commercial and which are biased, which are more inclined towards the Anglo-Saxon journals, or the journals from the global north, to which we formally belong, but not factually, in terms of means and money and funds available. So basically, they would look at this, national assessment bodies, they will look at the impact factor. They will probably reward those that are indexed there. For example, in Serbia, journals that are indexed in the Web of Science, they get subsidies, and the others are less likely to get them if they are not well ranked in the national rankings, journal ranking system, and probably this is and new initiatives, etc. So their perspective will be quite different, and it will be mainly focused on prestige, and they will probably try to find a kind of a proxy to assess the quality of a journal, instead of going and analyzing the quality of individual articles, etc., which is understandable, but there is space to review this approach. So basically, there are other quality assessment frameworks apart from these national assessment frameworks. For example, we have, and they were mentioned previously, for example, the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, they have their recommendations, Scope has their recommendations, etc. So they're trying to analyze the quality of journals detached from those scholarly communities, scholarly societies. They're trying to analyze quality detached from impact, which is good, but they are usually quite, how should I say, they're not really closed, but they speak to particular communities. They are not all of them are global. So there are also indexing criteria by those global indexing databases. I mentioned Web of Science, Scopus, etc., which are relevant for our local research assessment frameworks. And they focus on some so-called quality criteria. For example, they analyze whether the journal has peer review, the editorial board, whether the websites are okay, whether they're sufficiently transparent, but they also tend to assess the impact. And what they call impact is usually measured by citations in their databases, which are biased in terms of the content scope of what they index, and also they're quite limited when it comes to tracking citations. So they claim, they imply that, for example, local journals don't have any citations because just they don't track them. They can't track them. So I don't say that local journals are hugely cited, but basically there is more than that can be found in Web of Science and Scopus. So they are quite biased. And also we have funding criteria. For example, in Serbia and in Croatia, they used to have a national system of subsidies for local journals. I mentioned, so they are sometimes, yes, they take into account the so-called quality criteria and formal quality criteria, what there is peer review, etc. Peer review is crucial, the editorial board, etc., whether the journals assign the OIs. So these are some technical criteria, but basically they also favor journals that are indexed in some international databases. And also tenure and promotion criteria, they are closely related to those national evaluation frameworks. And there are many more depending on the context and depending on the country. So we usually, as I mentioned, we usually use those proxies for quality. So we don't go and analyze the journal content in detail. We don't try to, how should I say, establish some average quality or a baseline for the quality of articles in a journal. We don't really read the articles. But we try to find a kind of a proxy of a measure for this quality. And this measure is a problem because it's quite often, it's not really a measure of the quality. For example, the journal impact factor, and then the brand of the publisher. So we have good and bad publishers. So I usually get questions like, is MDPI a good publisher? Or rather than, is this particular journal a good journal? Because publishers may have good journals and may have bad journals. So not all of journals are of the same quality, but we usually imply that there are good publishers. So this is highly problematic. So also publication source, which means journal, good or bad journal, the reputation of a journal. Also high rejection rates. I object this totally. This is not really a measure of quality, because we have journals, they don't really have high submission rates, but they do quite a lot to improve the quality of their submissions. So this is not really a measure. We have journals that have high rejection rates, and they still don't really manage to establish a good quality of the articles they publish. So this is not really a measure. It depends where, what, who rejects. How many submissions are there? Why there? For example, local journals, they don't have many submissions, but there is a reason for that. So this is hugely problematic as well. Also the editors and the composition of the editorial board. For example, the Web of Science always has a look of this, and they even try to measure the citation rates of the editor and the prestige of those persons who are on the editorial board, which doesn't really speak of the quality of a journal. So we also have black and white lists, many of which, actually most of which, are informal, but they have some influence in the community. So basically, my random observations, as I already mentioned, so the quality of the content, which should be actually crucial to quality assessment, is only one of the criteria. And in some quality assessment frameworks, it's not taken into account. For example, in libraries, we don't assess the quality of individual articles. So in some of these criteria, this is not taken into account. Basically, the problem is that impact is measured as an intrinsic quality element, and this is not. This is the outreach, and it depends on many external factors, on the community, on the visibility, on technical factors, and this is not an intrinsic element of quality and shouldn't be taken as such. So basically, do we really know what quality means, and should we unpack this and try to explain in a different way this phenomenon? The problem, this concept of quality, using proxies and using prestige as a measure, and measures of prestige, various measures of prestige, poses huge challenges for non-commercial open access journals. And we have this burden. Open access journals have this burden of having to explain whether they are predatory or not. You never say, well, this is a subscription-based journal, it's predatory. People rarely say this, but when they ask you about the quality of an open access journal, they usually say, well, is it predatory or not? So it's a completely wrong assumption. And they also struggle with the lack of resources, and you know this much better than me. So in the DIAMAS project, we try to establish a kind of a more equitable standard, and there will be a tool, a self-assessment tool by the end of May, where this will be an application, a web application, where you can go and actually assess yourself as a publisher, not a journal, but this is also applicable for journals. So in this quality standard, quality is unpacked. there are seven core components. We are not dealing with the content quality because we are not an expert, not experts. So this is for you as experts to decide. But we try to define everything else. And these seven core components, open science has a very, as Jadranka has already mentioned, has a very important role among these seven core components. So they cover everything. It's funding, it's transparency of legal operation, of ownership, of governance of a journal, editorial management. For example, those scholarly community standards, they usually focus on editorial management and not so much on these other elements. Visibility, communication, technical service efficiency. So the idea of this framework is not to, it's meant to be instructive. It's not to be used in evaluation. So that's why technical service efficiency has a kind of an important role here, because it tells you how to improve your journal and your publishing operation. And also equity, diversity, and inclusion and belonging have an important role. There is quite a low awareness of these topics everywhere in Europe and all over the world. This is quite a new topic, and in the region in particular. But this quality standards means to be instructive, and there will be a toolkit telling you how to improve these elements. So basically, I will show it. Focuses on formal criteria. This is from the project deliverable, but there will be this tool that I mentioned. So you have elements. Each core category has some elements, and some of these elements.
Excuse me, colleague. Can you finish
yeah, in
for
a second.
a minute?
Yeah, that's exactly. I'm finishing. Yeah. So I have one more slide. So basically, some of these core components are required, elements are required, and the other are desired. So these are priorities for you. So when you read, these are priorities for you, what to do first when you're trying to improve your journal. And these are the slides from explaining this. You will find this, there is a link, you will find this in this deliverable. So there's seven components. So basically, what is my message today? We need to understand that the concept of quality is complex, and we need to think about the complexity of this problem. We should think how to redefine this, and we should try to detach quality from prestige, and we should try to take action to influence our local quality assessment bodies to change their approach and to stop focusing on prestige.